Chapter 13 begins with consumption and savings. We need to understand that there is something known as autonomous consumption. Autonomous consumption is the idea that no matter how much or how little money you have, you're going to have to spend something. So if your income is $0, you're still going to need to buy food, shelter, clothing, and you'll go ahead and spend that $40, giving you a savings of $40, even if you have no income coming in. You're already going into debt. As your income increases, you'll be able to pull yourself out of that debt. And as the more and more money you make, the greater amount of your consumption occurs. You can see that on this graph here, that your disposable income, or how much money you have after you've purchased everything you need, begins to increase as you make a greater amount of money. The AP exam doesn't really look at this type of graph all that much. Instead, they're more concerned with things known as marginal propensity to consume and marginal propensity to save. Marginal propensity to consume basically states that if you were to get one more dollar, remember, marginal is the next unit. If you were to get one more dollar, how much of that dollar would you use to go and buy things with? Marginal propensity to save is just the opposite. If you were to get one more dollar, how much of that dollar would you save? Remember, there's only two things you can do with your money. You can either consume it or you can save it. Therefore, the MPC plus MPS is equal to 1. For example, if you were to get one more dollar of income and you were to always go ahead and spend 80 cents of it, your MPC would be 0.8, and therefore your MPS would have to be 0.2. In this section, we're going to learn that gross domestic product, or GDP, has the ability to be impacted by changes in spending by what is known as a multiplying effect, which is, in this case, 1 over MPS. On the AP exam, 1 over MPS could be known as the consumption multiplier, the spending multiplier, or the simple multiplier. They're all the same. GDP, all the goods and services produced in a nation in a year, is impacted by spending. If we spend more money, we're going to buy more goods and services, and therefore send a signal to producers to make more goods and services, causing GDP to go up. The more you consume, the more you add to GDP. The more you save, the less is added. Savings is considered to be a leakage, whereas consumption is considered to be an injection into the economy. Now let me go ahead and try and explain how this math works here. Remember, aggregate demand, AD, is made up of different sectors in our economy: government spending, consumer spending, business spending, and foreign spending. If the government were to decide to spend, let's say, $100, and everybody in the economy has a marginal propensity to consume of 0.8, this means that everybody in the economy also has a marginal propensity to save of 0.2. If the government spends $100 and gives it to this person here, and they pay them to build a model of a road, well, that person has built the model of road, so GDP goes up by that $100 worth of a road. But the money doesn't stop there. This person will save 20% of their money, or $20, and put it into the bank. They will then take the remaining $80 and give it to this person over here, who then sells them a TV or makes them a TV. I'm not a really good artist here, guys. Sorry. I had to choose things that I could kind of draw. So now GDP increases by the road plus the TV. But that person doesn't just bury their money in the backyard. They're going to save 20% or $16, place it into the bank, and then spend the remaining $64 on, let's say, a skateboard. And then this person saves 20% or $12.80, puts it in the bank, and then spends the remaining $51.20 on, this is supposed to be a pogo stick. But you get the idea. The $100 doesn't just stop with the first person. The $100 is continually spent throughout the economy, and every time it just gets 20% smaller. If you were to go ahead and continue all the way down to a penny and add up all these numbers together, it would get you this multiplier of 1 over MPS. The change, this triangle means change, is their delta symbol. The change in GDP is equal to a change in AD. In this case, we are changing AD by changing government spending by $100 times our consumption multiplier of 1 over MPS. Everyone in the economy had an MPS of 0.2. 1 over 0.2 is equal to 5 times 100. So that $100 increase in government spending yielded a positive increase of GDP change of $500. The government has the ability to also influence spending or aggregate demand consumption by changing taxes. Remember, if we were to lower someone's taxes, that means you have more money. If you have a greater income or more money, you're going to go out and consume more. The tax multiplier is a little bit different. The formula is the change in GDP is equal to a change in taxes times 1 over MPS, but then also times the marginal propensity to consume. This is because people do not consume all of their tax savings. They're only going to consume a portion of it. In this example, we had everyone consuming just 0.8%. So instead of the government paying someone to create a road, they instead just lower the taxes by $100 for that person. This drop in $100 would increase that person's consumption. But now the $100 road isn't added to GDP. So we have the TV, the skateboard, and the pogo stick are all added, but the road was not. So GDP is missing out on that $100 road. Let's see how it impacts it. Well, if we use the formula over here, the drop in $100 in taxes times 1 over our MPS of 0.2 times 0.8, we see that GDP will increase by $400. Please note that I understand that this is a negative or a drop in taxes, but you have to use your logic and know that a drop in taxes will increase consumption in a positive manner. If taxes are decreased, consumption, which is a component of aggregate demand, goes up. If aggregate demand goes up, then GDP will go up. Remember, down here we have our quantity or the GDP, and as demand increases, we're going to see GDP going up. What we can conclude from this is that government spending has a greater impact on GDP than tax change of the same amount. Government spending was able to increase GDP by 500, whereas taxes were only able to change it by 400. If government spending is greater than the amount of taxes taken in, the government is said to have a budget deficit. If government spending is less than the tax revenue, we have a budget surplus. If government spending is equal to the tax revenue or tax change, we are said to have a balanced budget. The balanced budget multiplier is equal to 1. Let me explain here. Let's pretend now that the government increases that $100, and at the same time, the government also increases taxes, not lowers them from the last example, but this time they increase taxes by $100. So tax revenue is going up by 100, and government spending is also going up by that same 100. If the MPC for everyone was 0.8, so we'll use the same numbers as last time, increase in government spending would cause GDP to go up by 500, as we saw before. And this time, if we increase taxes so people have less money, they'll drop their spending and GDP will decrease by 400. This leaves a positive net change in GDP of $100. 100 is simply a multiple of 1 of the original change. So, for example, if you were to decrease government spending and decrease taxes by, say, $19, then GDP would have decreased by $19. The MPC doesn't matter. It's always going to be a multiple of 1. Now, on the AP exam, there's 3 different MPCs or MPSs they like to use. They either use 0.9, 0.8, or 0.75 for your marginal propensity to consume, which means they use MPSs of 0.1, 0.2, and 0.25. Here's your quick cheat sheet. 1 over MPS of 0.1 is 10, 1 over 0.2 is 5, 1 over 0.25 is 4. Some people don't like having to do that mental math, but we can conclude that as people consume less, as the MPC decreases from 0.9 to 0.75, the multiplier of how much GDP is being impacted also decreases. The last part here of Chapter 13 is the loan wolf funds market. Loan wolf funds we can think of as our MPS. It's the extra money people have. Now, it is not free to borrow money. You have to pay what is known as an interest rate. Interest is the cost of borrowing money. If you're the one who is demanding or spending some of this loan wolf funds, you will be the one who has to pay that real interest rate. If you are the one supplying the extra money, the extra loan wolf funds, you would be the one receiving the interest rate. Now, there are 4 major sectors in our economy: households, government, foreigners, and businesses. Any 4 of these components have the ability to have extra money and add it to the loan wolf funds, or they have the ability to reduce their amount that they're contributing and decrease the loan wolf funds. If, for example, down here, we saw that household savings were to drop and people saved less, or if you were to see that foreigners stopped adding their money to our economy, they stopped investing in our economy, then you would see this decrease in household savings, causing a decrease in the supply of loan wolf funds. As there's less funds available for everybody, as things become more rare, it should cost more to get them. In this case, it will cost more interest. It will have a higher real interest rate to acquire those loan wolf funds. The demand of loan wolf funds is really nothing more than spending in the economy. Those 4 components that have the ability to add extra money also have the ability to spend. If households increase their consumption, or if government spending runs a budget deficit, if we make more loans to foreigners, or if business spending on things like capital were to increase, you would see an increase in the demand of loanable funds. If government spending were to increase, the demand of loanable funds by the government increases. As demand rises, it should now cost more to acquire those same amount of loanable funds. So interest rates go up. Remember, interest is the cost of borrowing money. If interest rates increase, this is going to lead to a drop in borrowing and spending, which will lower future aggregate demand. We'll take a look at this in a deeper review in next chapters. Thank you.